have a couple things going on in my heart today. First is longing for the Lord's coming, and even feeling frustrated and going, Lord, when are you coming? And it's not that I'm not happy with my life, or I know I'm blessed and I'm occupying, and yet I find myself really having this longing for Him. And also, I have subscribers on my wall that are not from this country, so they don't live here, but so they may not really know, may not have the same situation where they are. But here, there's a climate that's kind of scary, obviously. And I've always feared groupthink more than anything. Like, I do not react well to a crowd all running in the same direction. That always scared me, because I know those no matter what direction they're running in, they're being manipulated if they're all running together. And it's just the way it works. And I always have felt a spirit in it, whether it's whatever they're excited about, good or bad. I've always felt myself resisting that. And anyway, in our country right now, what you've got is a mob mentality, an increasingly politically active mob that's being manipulated by pop culture. And it's so clear and obvious to see. And it's scary because it's being used as a weapon to take our country in a direction that it ain't going to be good for anybody. And I was reading today about there's kids all across the country who are going to walk out of their schools, grade school and middle school and high school, I guess, to protest to protest the adults handling the environment. They're all whipped up into a hysteria, thinking that they've got a desperate 11 years left before everything's out of control, and so any measure that's suggested has to be implemented immediately, no matter how radical, and anybody who would fight these ideas is just a pariah. And they're crying out for the new Green Deal, which is just absolutely the most ridiculous. As far as I understand, it's like the most it's so radical that no one wants to get behind that who's an adult. But these kids who are obviously being manipulated, and even the petitions that they're writing are clearly the verbiage of adults, they're being turned and directed as weapons against their parents. And it's a political move. It has nothing to do with the environment. That's just a pretext. And I mean, so like that, the future, if you want to see what the future is going to look like, you just look at what the people who are growing up believe. And there's a huge gap between us and that generation. And we're the bad guys, so that's scary. That's been done before, and it's scary. And then just like the direction of things are going politically is bad. The direction is bad for politics. The direction is bad for finances. The direction is bad for economics, for health. So many millions of people they're medicated, and they're artificially stabilizing their personality with drugs that are all highly addictive, and the withdrawal is worse than the symptoms in the first place. And there's going to come a time, I can see it, when those drugs are no longer available, and absolute chaos is going to break out, because people are going to go completely unhinged. And I've got some experience with that stuff to know that, like, man, it is not good. I don't want to be dependent on an outside source for regulating my moods, except the Lord, So it's just scary. And then, jobs, everything, every direction you look in, there's no good news on the horizon. So that's not good, and I'm not trying to live in a spirit of fear either, but we are afraid as a culture, and it's just like, Lord, how long? Where is the tipping point, really? We all believe he should come right now, and there's plenty of watchmen saying he is, and I hope they're right. I long for his coming, and yet I occupy, and I don't have the feeling. I know that we will sense in our spirit, like the day of, we're going to know, because we're walking in the light. We're going to be full of joy and expectation. We're going to know. I don't sense that yet. So yes, he could be in a moment, but I don't have that inward sense of the morning star rising, right? Like Peter said. But could be tomorrow, could be tonight. Maybe that, Lord, please come. That's how I feel. And the other thing is, I'm watching YouTube, I'm watching comments, I'm watching people defend the faith, and I'm watching people attack the faith. And I'm noticing that for the most part, they're using this Bible verse against that Bible verse. It's all very verse oriented. And I'm hoping that that is not how people are reading the Bible, that they're just collecting verses that seem to stack up in their favor. And I just want to encourage people to be the Berean, and when you read the Bible, when you find a verse, look at the whole context, look at the chapter, and then look at the book that the chapter sits in, and then look at where that book is in the narrative as a whole. Because as you do that, you'll get into God's thought. You'll be able to express what God thinks of the matter, and that's how the Spirit will come out. The reading the Bible and following the thought of the apostle is more important even than just reading and collecting verses. Verses will help you stand, but to get into the thought of the apostle, the stream of thought, brings you into knowing the Holy Spirit, and then being able to react the way he does to various situations and dilemmas and questions. And I just don't see a lot of that, even from the teachers. I'm really seeing verses taken in isolation, like a collection of verses that say the same thing, and yet I don't hear context. And maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I just think there's a depth that's kind of missing. And you're not going to win over anyone with a bunch of verses stacked up in a line. You really need to have the ability to articulate a vision of what it is that God's doing and why he does things. What was the purpose of the law? What is the dispensation of grace? What are the unsearchable riches of Christ? What is the eternal purpose of God? What is it that we're predestined unto? And who are the heirs? And what is it that they're to inherit? These are bigger concepts that just a smattering of verses aren't going to really help you with. You really need to be assimilating books of the Bible. And, one of the things that I always suggest, and I don't always do, because I typically don't engage in debates. Like on my wall, I get somebody, if I find out they're a unprofitable person in terms of they got a reprobate mind, and they're clearly not thinking straight, and they're not going to be reasoned with, well, then I hide them from my channel. So, because I don't want to be tempted to deal with them, and I don't want other people to be drawn into their deal, so I don't engage directly in debates. I just find it, for the most part, unfruitful. I don't see anybody winning anybody else over. But the debate is valuable if it strengthens the faith of those who are watching. So I do videos to answer certain questions and stuff, and I know there's plenty of you out there that are really kind of on the front lines having these debates, and it's not even for the sake of the person you're debating with, it's the sake of the people who are watching. Well, anyway, in these debates, I suggest, if they quote a verse, ask them what the chapter is about the verse is in. You're not going to get an answer from them. Ask them what the book is about. it's pretty basic that we should know the books of the Bible, especially the New Testament, and be able to give a short summary of what that book is about. You know, what is Romans about? What is Galatians about? What is Ephesians about? What is Colossians about? And, you know, I've been noticing in my conversations with people who disagree with me that they haven't even read Galatians and they've never read the book of Acts. So they have no idea what I'm talking about when I bring up, you know, some of these things with James and stuff. It's all in the Bible, but they're not familiar, you know. But that is a good question. Can you articulate what the book is about? And then kind of like a summary of the major chapters. That's a little more, but I can do it for most of the books. I think the big one, like 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, I need a refresher on. Those are long books to break down. I can do the first few chapters, but like Romans, I can tell you what every chapter main topic is about. Ephesians, Galatians, getting there on Galatians, you know. Acts, I can give you the main highlights. I don't know every little detail of Paul's missionary journeys and stuff, but I can tell you the high peaks in the book of Acts and where the tension is and where the resolution is, or, you know, I can break it down. Like, anyway, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that's how I look at things, is that when you understand the contents of a book and you can kind of outline what the book has in its chapters, main points, you now start to get a feeling of where these verses you're quoting sit in a larger narrative. And that larger narrative is the key to understanding the mind of Christ and having the wisdom to answer, you know, when things come at you. And I'm encouraging it. You know, I'm not saying, oh, I do that. I'm asking, can you do this? And then beyond then breaking down chapter by chapter, what is the main content of each chapter? Another good exercise is, what is the role of the Spirit in each of these, right? And I have a Bible study video where I suggested using colored pencils to outline everything the Father does in one color, the Christ does in one color, the Spirit does in one color, the church does in one color, and negative things in another color, and blessings in another color. By the time you do that, it's amazing how things stand out. Like Colossians, if you use green, for example, for the Spirit, and you use red for Christ, well, Romans 8 is going to be lots of green. Colossians is going to be mostly red, because it's more focused on Christ. 2 Corinthians is going to be more green, because it's the work of the Spirit within the believer for the New Testament ministry. Every book has its topic and emphasis, and even the person of the triune God and his work is emphasized a little differently in each book. And it's as you see these kind of things that the truth will pop out in terms of bigger, larger, abstract concepts, and not just a memorized collection of verses. So I encourage you to try to do that. Try to find out what the different books in the New Testament are about, and then see if you can take the ones you're pretty familiar with and just to yourself, or even write down a summary, chapter by chapter, what are the main points. Do an outline. That's the way to do it, is to go through the books and do an outline of main point of the chapter, and then the subpoints that he hits. Then you'll see how everything flows. And believe me, it makes a difference in how you approach truth and articulate it, and how equipped you are to be able to navigate when someone's attacking. Okay, I gotta get going. Talk to you later.